The competition is heating up in your fantasy football league, and as you try to pull away or play catch-up with a grueling week of trades, waiver pickups, and lineup tweaks, don't forget, let your loved ones know that you're still breathing with bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Take it from me, nothing tops the excitement of a 1-800-Flowers bouquet, and right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, 1-800-Flowers will give you another dozen absolutely free. That's 40% off the original price. This beautiful bouquet of 2 dozen roses in a rainbow of colors will leave your loved one stunned without spending a fortune. It's the best of both worlds. Amazing roses at an unbeatable price. These gorgeous roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. A dozen multicolored roses for $29.99 plus another dozen free. It's an incredible deal and a small price to pay with all your fantasy league winnings. There's 1-800-Flowers.com and there's everybody else. You know who I trust when the game's on the line. To order a dozen multicolored roses plus an extra bouquet for just $29.99, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike.
America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. As we sit here with you on a jam-packed sports Monday morning, as they always are, and today particularly so. Obviously, we have the baseball season coming to an end yesterday, so we have the playoffs starting tomorrow, and we'll certainly talk a lot about that, particularly tomorrow. And we have O.J. Simpson being released from prison over the weekend. We have the full slate of college football action on Saturday and NFL action on Sunday. And Booger McFarland joins us here in our studio as he does every Monday. And we're doing the best we can for you here today to talk about sports, because we hope that some of you will be with us today because you need a little bit of a respite from what feels like it is an almost daily barrage of this horrible and frightening and terrible news. And today is no different from so many others. If you're just waking up and have not heard what is being reported as by CNN as being the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history took place overnight in Las Vegas at a country music festival. Yeah. Mike Jason Aldean, who's an artist I know that you know and are a fan of, was performing, and a gunman opened fire from the 32nd floor window, and they subsequently got him, and they got the gunman, and the gunman is dead. But it doesn't change the fact that at last count, 50 people were killed and over 200 injured. And as we've now said multiple times, I don't know what to say. Yeah. It's your job to be a broadcaster and to try and come up with some comment at a time like this. And I, for one, Mike, am just at a loss for
it blows my mind how in that minute, 2 minute of time, how many lives have been changed, forever. Lives lost that the families deal with, and injured people that you don't know. There's so many that are in critical condition right now. It always is amazing, though, Booger, as we've talked about, first responders always running the wrong way, going into danger. But it's amazing to me that the everyday person, how they help as well. We've seeing and hearing so many stories of people pulling, people that don't even know that are just there to safety out of the way or getting them to an ambulance. But you hate that they have to do that. The resolve of the human spirit is incredible in times of crisis, and you see that and you're like, wow, that's amazing that they're doing that. But then you're like, my God, they have to be doing that because some nut job is up there 32 floors up just firing away at people for God knows what reason in their own ridiculous mind, and you have so many lives that end or get changed because of it.
Golick, the only thing I know to do at times like this is just pray. You pray for the people that have lost their lives, their families, and you hope that the sick people that do things like this, we can figure out a way to find them out before they do things of this nature, because it's sick, it's devastating, and it's just not right.
So the best we can do for you this morning, again, here, aside from offering our thoughts, is just do a football show and the rest of the sports news as well. And if you're choosing to spend this morning with us, we thank you for it. And again, I think the best we can do is try and take your mind off of this seemingly endless bad news, and we'll get to a bunch of the college with Booger as the hour progresses here, because that's what he's doing these days with ABC and the Saturday, and I love watching you guys in there and all that stuff. But let's start with a couple of the NFL questions before we get any further into this, and let's start with a team we haven't talked a lot about here this morning so far, and that is Philadelphia. You know, the Eagles have gotten off to a very nice start this morning. They banked a big home win in the division to start the season in Washington, and boy, how big is that starting to look? Now, we'll see what the Skins do tonight against the last unbeaten in Kansas City. But they find ways to win, and they've got some nice guys on the outside for Carson Wentz to be throwing to, and the defense is pretty good. Mike, we haven't talked about it much today, but Booger, as you watch the Eagles play right now, what do you think we're seeing?
Well, I think you're seeing a defense that's more comfortable, a defense that's playing better. Fletcher Cox is starting to assert himself as one of the more dominant players. Not that he hasn't been, but he's becoming even more dominant now. And on offense, they were waiting on Nelson Aguilar to step up. Receiver out of USC, Tampa kid, had the dropsies early in his career. Now he's starting to catch the football better. But it just goes to show you, when you're an organization and you hit the quarterback position right, what your organization can be. Okay, Carson Wentz, we had so many doubts about him, but they were right. And Carson Wentz makes so many plays. Nelson Aguilar comes in. I understand Sproles, you lose him. But what they can do from an offensive standpoint around Carson Wentz and his skill set, especially when you get guys catching the ball, Jeffrey, Aguilar, I like where they are right now. I think they're in a very, very good spot. And when you look at the NFC East right now, the Giants are 0-4, and McAdoo has zero answer for what they're doing down there. You look at Dallas, they lose a game yesterday where a lot of people probably not outside of Los Angeles thought they were going to lose. And the Redskins, we don't just yet know what they're going to be, although they're coming off an impressive win against the Oakland Raiders. Why not the Eagles in the NFC East, especially how they're playing right now?
I've been impressed with them running the ball because, Wisniewski has filled in for some injury at guard, Kelsey at center. They're not the biggest guys around in the world, but God knows their toughness. I mean, these are guys that will stick their face mask into a chest and bite, scratch, kick, do whatever they have to get the job done. They ran the ball 42 times. They almost doubled up the Chargers in time of possession. So that you don't always expect. Blunt had 16 carries, 136 yards in this one. They have 214 yards overall. So Aguilar, I'm right with you on him stepping up. Zach Ertz is always going to be a huge target for Carson Wentz. Those guys have a great special relationship going on. But boy, if they can run the ball, and they're not going to run for over 200 yards all the time, but if they can control a little more running the ball, that is really going to help Wentz out a lot. And yesterday, that was the name of the game for him, as they had just about 40 minutes of time of possession.
Right,
yesterday.
Running the ball and more experienced quarterback play and time of possession, meaning 2 years ago, you're going back to the Chip Kelly stuff, would lead you to a statistic like this. The Eagles are 2-0 in games this year that were decided by 3 points or fewer. The last 2 years, they're 1-5 in those games. You start winning those close games, that pendulum switched back on the Cowboys a little, who found ways to. The game that the Cowboys lost yesterday is a game they won every week last year.
Right.
And those things just kind of even themselves out, and all of a sudden Philly is looking very much like they may be the team to beat in that division. Another team that I really like the way they play is Detroit. As I watch the Lions play every single week this year, and they could have, maybe should have beaten Atlanta. A call at the very end of the game is probably the right call, but they lose by 6 inches in a 10-second runoff at home. Otherwise, they're sitting at unbeaten right now. Do the Lions, in your view right now, Booger, as they run the ball a little better, do they play enough defense to win that division?
They do, but they have to get explosive plays on their defense from their front four. Ziggy Ansah has to be a terror on the quarterback. They're not good enough individually to stop a team from going 70, 80 yards down the field. They have to get turnovers. They have to get explosive plays. They're not quite like the New Orleans Saints when the Saints won the Super Bowl, where the Saints had to get almost 40 turnovers and opportunistic defensive plays to stop people to go along with that explosive offense. But they're in the same vein as they don't have the personnel where they can just roll their head out there and say, you know what, we're going to win this game 17-13. Okay, they need to get stops periodically to give Matthew Stafford the football. And for Stafford, I want to see him become more consistent. We all give him credit toward the end of the football game. If you give Stafford the ball with less than 2 minutes, man, he's unstoppable. Well, what about the first 58? We need him to become more consistent, and I think he has, and the running game will help him. It's amazing how in football we laud these quarterbacks, Ryan, Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, all these guys, and say, man, these guys can win the game by themselves. No, they can't, okay? They can put themselves in a position where if you give them enough opportunities, they'll win you the game. But they're not going to win it by themselves. They need a good running game. Nobody needs to be throwing the football 60 times a game. They need a solid running game and a good defensive performance, and Matthew Stafford is no different.
I agree with you on the defense as far as big plays. They got 3 fumble recoveries yesterday, no interceptions. But here's the best thing to me. They held the ball for over 13 minutes more than Minnesota. Stafford threw the ball 31 times. They ran the ball 31 times. And not for a lot of yards. They ran it 31 times for 97 yards. My quick math says just a hair over 3.3 yards a carry, right? Right in that area there.
That's close.
Little more than that. That's not great. You're not going to make a living on that, but when you can throw the ball well like Stafford can, now you can. This is when we talk about attempts of rushing, where you're not breaking it off and you're not averaging 5-6 yards per attempt. You're averaging 3 or a little over 3 yards, but that's okay. You're still running the ball. Abdullah ran it 20 times yesterday, and he's a guy that can catch it out of the backfield as well as Theo Riddick. So that's what I like about them. They are giving the run a chance. They're not just saying, well, we don't run the ball, or when we run the ball, we're getting stopped for 2 yards or 3 yards, so we're just going to throw the ball. They stick with it and stick with the game plan.
Booger's here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. I'm just scrolling through some of the things being tweeted. I'm reading our friend and colleague Louis Riddick tweeted the following. Baffling watching tape of the Patriots secondary not be able to communicate through and cover bunch stack formations. Not good, but correctable. To me, that's the really big phrase at the end there. Not good, but correctable. The things that we are seeing go wrong for that New England defense, and again, only Indy has allowed more points through 4 games this year than the 2-2 Patriots have. We know they're not good.
Yeah.
But, guys, are they correctable?
Yes,
Sure.
yes. I mean, it's really no different than me and you sitting here talking. And what they mean by a bunch formation, usually when you have 3 guys together, they call it a bunch. Well, it's tough to play man-to-man when you have 3 guys that tight. So usually what they have is one guy will take the guy that comes in, one guy will take the guy that comes out, and if a guy goes deep, another guy will take him. Well, that's communication. You have to be talking, and it's tougher at home to talk. Let's not forget that. When you're on defense, your crowd is going crazy. So it's often tougher to play defense at home than it is to play offense because the crowd is going crazy and you have to communicate. I just think from a corner safety standpoint, when you have Gilmore, who's new, okay, Butler's been there, McCourty, those guys should have that down by now. Gilmore's not a rookie. He's a guy that's been around the league, and it's really baffling to me that you have veteran football players who aren't communicating. I think Bill is going to take that personally. I think Matt Patricia is going to take that personally. Something is amiss when you have veterans not doing that.
Oh, without a doubt. And then you have at times like Funchess is wide open in the end zone where you just have a complete breakdown of coverage. So, yeah, all that stuff is correctable. When you're a player, there's the first thing you need to do is line up in the right spot.
Yeah.
You know, in my dad coaching me and then me coaching my sons, first and foremost, know where the hell you're supposed to be, okay? And then once you're there, know what you're supposed to do. That's the beginning of it all. If I'm going up against an O-lineman and he just I do what I'm supposed to do and he just physically beats me, well, that's something I got to work on. But if I shoot the wrong gap, now I've created havoc. Now I've opened this huge hole. That's correctable. That's just, hey, Golick, you're in the wrong gap. Get in the right gap. And then we'll talk about now beating the guy one-on-one and using your technique, right hand, right foot, you know, the whole deal that way. But first and foremost, line up where you're supposed to, know what your responsibility is, and when you don't, you see the results.
This is a pattern with New England, though.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen this all year long. I've heard you mention it this morning, and that's the alarming thing. We keep saying, yeah, Bill will get it fixed. Well, how come he hadn't got it fixed the first 4 weeks? And so I understand we want to give Bill Belichick all the credit, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
But what's going on the last 4 weeks that he hadn't gotten it fixed so far? This is like 4 weeks into the season, and we're still seeing the same thing. So maybe these guys are just tuning Bill out or aren't listening at practice.
Which would be stunning.
Well, which would be stunning,
Yeah.
but we're seeing it for 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
4 consecutive weeks he's allowed 300-yard passing days to Alex Smith and Deshaun Watson and Cam. And who was week 2 now? I'm blanking. Oh, Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, right.
Who's obviously done that to a lot of different people over the years. But I mean, it is what it is. You give up 4 consecutive 300-yard passing days. That doesn't happen particularly often to Belichick or to anyone for that matter. And they're not, I mean, I don't know if it's communication, but they're not getting any pressure on the quarterback.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, the longer there can be lack of communication, and then you're asking a guy to cover for too long. Or you're not getting the pressure. And as Jeff Saturday said when he was in here and he's right. This is a defense that's normally very good at setting the edge. And they've been giving up a lot of outside runs, starting in week 1 to Kareem Hunt and going on and on for guys bouncing and being able to turn the corner. That's something this defense would not do by setting the corner, and they haven't been doing that.
Speaking of defense, obviously there are some really good defenses around the sport right now. We've talked about Denver's defense. How about Buffalo's defense and the way they're playing right now? The Bills are 3-1. They're sort of a dropped pass on a 4th down away from maybe being unbeaten right now. They're in first place in the division this late in the season for the first time since 2008, for whatever that's worth. But how good is that defense? How good are the Bills? Are we buying into the Bills a quarter of the way into the season?
The Bills have gone back to who they were before Rex Ryan. If you remember what that defense was before Rex Ryan, I mean, they got almost 50-some sacks. They were rushing the passer, they were creating havoc. Rex comes in, changes the defense. Mario Williams looks lost. Like, man, what's going on? Now you take out Rex. Now they're back to attacking the quarterback. They're back to getting and playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Kyle Williams, a veteran football player who's been around the league a long time. He's the leader of this defense, the leader of this team, and they're playing to the beat of his drum. And for me, that defense has to be aggressive. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think his ability to run just enough keeps the defense honest, and he's throwing the football very well right now. A lot of people say that, man, maybe they need to change the quarterback. I like what they have, and Greeny, never, ever underestimate the attitude of a new coach. When you look at Sean McDermott, the attitude and the personality he brings to that team. When you get a new coach, or when you get a coach in general, most teams play by the personality of their head coach. And Sean McDermott has changed everything. Rex Ryan changed it from a negative standpoint because they didn't play well. But what Sean McDermott is doing right there, he has those guys galvanized, and he believes in Tyrod Taylor, and you can tell.
And these players, I mean, listen to LaShawn McCoy in the locker room afterward. They're playing with that huge chip on their shoulder. Like everybody, we're still handing the division in New England, right? If we all had to bet any money worth anything right now, would we still say the Patriots are going to win that division? Well, the Bills hear all that. Again, their Twitter account tweeted out all of our picks. We all picked the Atlanta Falcons, which isn't shocking. Atlanta's at home,
right?
You know, and I know Julio got hurt, and I know Sanu got hurt. I get all that, but they're all playing with a chip on their shoulder, and good for them. They should be cussing all of us out and using us all they can, anybody all they can that is talking down about them to get it done. Defensively, they have 11 sacks by 6 different people, so it's not just one guy getting the pressure. I absolutely like what they're doing, and when you can lead the league in defensive scoring, you're giving your offense a chance.
Mike and Mike, we're brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. Upgrade to shaving with a fresh blade whenever you want for a fraction of the price. Join DollarShaveClub.com today. It's now however many months ago it was that we were all 3 of us together in Philadelphia for the NFL draft. Booger, you and I were actually sitting and watching the draft together that night. I remember eating something after playing golf that day, watching those quarterbacks go. And watching the Bears stun the world by trading up to get Trubisky, and watching Andy Reid stun the world by taking Patrick Mahomes when he did. And then it almost felt, I don't want to say it this way, it almost felt like Bill O'Brien said, all right, you left him there, so I'll take Deshaun Watson. And now all of a sudden this kid is just sensational. What he did yesterday was spectacular. No rookie quarterback had done what he did since Fran Tarkenton. The last guy before that was Charlie Connerly. So we're going back the combined 100 years since the last time we saw all of this stuff from what he's doing. Their defense is playing well. What you make your, mostly your living here covering college.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by how good Deshaun Watson looks this quickly?
No. Because, Greeny, I don't go by measurables when I look at collegiate players. I go by performance and their decision-making in the moments. I watched this kid 2 years in a row against the best defense known to man, led by Nick Saban, shred him. I mean, he gutted Alabama's defense, and that's all I need to see. So in the biggest games against an NFL-type defense, and that's what Saban runs because he's a Belichick disciple, Deshaun Watson showed you and proved to you he could play. So the fact that he went 12 to the Texans, to me, was a little surprising that he went that low. But his performance now in the National Football League is not surprising. He relishes being in the big moments. I picked Clemson against Alabama in the national championship game because all else being equal, the guy that had the S on his chest was wearing orange, and that's Deshaun Watson. What's baffling to me is the fact that it almost seemed like Bill O'Brien said, you know what, Tom Savage, I'm going to do you a solid. I'm going to let you start the first game of the season. I'm going to do you a solid because I owe you a favor. But after that, buddy, it's going to be a long season for you because you're not playing anymore. Because I still have no idea, like you, Greeny, why Deshaun Watson didn't start the season as a starting quarterback. But he's phenomenal. He's going to go through some growing pains. But what he has, Greeny, is great decision-making, great poise, And from a character standpoint, you won't meet a better guy because of how he grew up, and he appreciates where he is. And to me, I think he's the next great quarterback. Once you get past Winston, Mariota, and those guys, he's right there.
Yeah, just because you handle the big lights well in college doesn't always mean it's going to happen in the NFL. We've seen guys play big-time college ball and not translate. But as I said all along, Booger, I said it before the draft, he would have been my first quarterback taken. He has that it factor. Yep. And you look at him, and what do you look at when a quarterback develops? One of the things I look at, you look at his first game when he got thrown in there in the second half. Each game he's thrown the ball more times. Yep. And each game his completion percentage has gone up. In that first game when he got thrown in the second half, he completed 52% of his passes on 23 passes. Next game he started 24 passes, 62%. Next game, 33 passes, 67%. And this past game, 34 passes, 73%. So, and still anywhere from the average passing 5 yards to 9 yards to 8 yards. So it's not just dinking and dunking all the time. And he's improving there, which I think that's what you have to say about him, is he was going to come in and be the most ready to play right out of the gate. Now, we'll see where the ceiling goes, because that's exactly why Ryan Pace took Trubisky, right, is he thinks Trubisky's going to have the higher ceiling. As I said always, Booger, you draft somebody for 10 years, not 1 year. Right. You don't draft them for their rookie year. So we'll still see what happens with the other quarterbacks. But there's no denying that this guy, I compared it to Russell Wilson coming in now as a third rounder, so maybe not much was expected of Russell at first, but he wins the starting job. But just how quickly he's kind of taken over to where he seems already to have the trust of everybody else on that offense. And
it's the poise. And I'll give the fans just something to take a look at. Let's use Mike Glennon, a guy that's been in the league for a while. When Mike Glennon drops back in the pocket, he just looks frantic. It looks like everything is rushed. Watch Deshaun Watson. He doesn't look that way. That's the it factor. The it factor that I can be calm amidst everything that's going on. A guy like Glennon, who's been in the league a while, to me still doesn't have that. But when you look at Deshaun Watson, he has it already his rookie year.
And I don't know if he's listening to our conversation or not, but Louis Riddick, while we're having this discussion, 1 minute ago tweeted, "Nothing happens in a vacuum. For as good as Deshaun Watson was yesterday, Titans defense had no clue how to defend the multiple Texans attack." What does he mean by that?
Just that Bill O'Brien can come up with zone read, different formations, different personnel groupings.
Bill O'Brien has his playbook is
endless,
monstrous,
right,
of all the different things that you can do. And that's a credit then to Deshaun Watson to be able to digest that much of it, because that's another reason maybe Savage started this season is, you know what, there's a lot to spoon feed here and to take in. So the more Deshaun Watson has gotten of that as each week goes by, again, a credit to him to digest that.
And
playbook.
Look at what Andy Reid is doing also. Andy Reid is basically running a college offense right now. So Bill O'Brien, being very astute and smart, is saying, you know what, let me add some of those principles in. If I'm going to have a mobile quarterback, let me use him in that way. Run some zone read, run some RPOs, run pass options. So if you're an NFL defensive coordinator and you've never been to the college game, you don't understand how to deal with that. So you're going to see more and more guys start to run some of the college plays. And Andy Reid right now has a playbook full of them with Tyreek Hill and Alex Smith. And they are gutting people right now.
Tennessee had been doing it when Mariota got in the league to be able to use his strengths from college at this level.
We'll see Casey doing it tonight. Again, they're on Monday Night Football. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Coming up next, we'll turn our attention to a little bit of college football, which you would think might remind you of the NFL. But I've got one reason why right now it's a little more reminiscent of the NBA.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
All right, Booger McFarland's in our studio here, and obviously one would assume that college football would resemble the NFL more than it would any other sport, considering they're theoretically playing the same game. But right now, through a month of the season, college football looks a lot more like basketball, a lot more like the NBA, because it certainly feels like we are on a collision course for Clemson, Alabama, the trilogy, which we've seen with the Warriors and Cavs the last few years, Booger. So if someone says college football right now is Alabama, Clemson, and everybody else Is that overstating it?
No, that's exactly right. There's a gap between those two and everyone else. And I think they're playing the best. They have the best players. They got the two best coaches who are executing their plans the best right now. Now, does that mean that they're going to play for a championship? No. But it feels just like the NBA. Like, regardless of how they play or what happens, prime example, Greeny, Clemson is against Boston College 2 weeks ago. And everybody's saying, man, Clemson is sleepwalking. Kelly Bryant's not playing well. And they wind up winning by 20 points, I think, in that game. It just feels like we're headed there, the inevitability of that matchup. And let me say this. I have no problem with that matchup. Now, with that being said, there are some challengers in the category right below that if they get an opportunity and the ball bounces their way, they can play. Number one will be Penn State. Penn State has the best player in America, Saquon Barkley. They got a lot of intangibles. I like what they're doing offensively, number one. Number two, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma, they have a dynamic offensive game plan, some good receivers. I love Lincoln Riley's aggressiveness. Washington, I think they're going to win the Pac-12. I think they're going to be undefeated. But I just fear we're going to see the same thing we saw last year if they get into the college football playoff against an Alabama team. You look at other teams. Ohio State may make a run. Georgia's the team that really intrigues me right now.
There you go.
Because I think Georgia has the one thing that if you look at Alabama and you look at Georgia, you say, very similar. Dominant defense, dominant running game, quarterback manages the game very well. And, oh, by the way, who's the head coach? Kirby Smart. Where did he come from? He came from Alabama, and he's molded that team. They are tough, physical.
Love them.
Dude, they are tough and physical, and they're playing really, really well right now. But all those teams, and I'm not leaving out TCU and Oklahoma State and all these other – I get that. But it's Bama and then a group of 5 or 6 other teams that are – Bama and Clemson and 5 or 6 other teams that are right there. And I think they need help to get into the situation.
Think about it with Bama. You know, when you're playing a team like that, you say, okay, if we both play our perfect game, Bama's probably going to win. So we need them to maybe make some mistakes or maybe not play their best. They have gone 8 straight games without a turnover. 8 straight games without giving you an extra opportunity. I mean, it's just crazy. I agree with you about Georgia. I got to see them up close and personal when they came to South Bend, beat Notre Dame 20-19. Now it looks like it's Notre Dame's only loss, and Notre Dame has been running all over people since. It looks like a good loss now to them. But sticking to Georgia, they're not going back to East, and Fromm's going to be the guy as the freshman. At least I don't think so.
No, they're not.
So here's the question to me. What happens if these two teams, in Georgia and Bama, wouldn't meet till the SEC championship game if they're both undefeated? Then the biggest question to me is, does the loser get in?
Well, to me, that would
depending on the game, if it's a good, close game.
Correct.
And obviously, are there other undefeateds and things like that as well? But that's what we've never had. What was it, Hembo? We've never had 2 undefeateds in the Final Four.
No.
So if that holds true, the winner of that game would be the only undefeated in. Maybe you'll get one more undefeated. But say you have 2 undefeateds and 2 one-loss. The other one-losses are going to be teams that are conference champs, most likely, even though we saw that it's possibility it doesn't happen like it did last year. But could one of them be the loser if those 2 teams are undefeated going to the SEC championship?
I think what you look at right now, when you start to look at the Power 5 conferences, the Pac-12 is really in a tough situation right now. USC was their darling, Sam Darnold.
Sure was.
They've been playing with fire all year, and then Friday night, Pac-12 after dark, they finally got burned.
Mike Leach, man.
Hey.
Is that dude unreal?
It's like Woodstock, except everybody had their clothes on.
What a great line
it's the best line ever.
How good are they? I mean, because I was jotting names down when you were going through names that could compete, and I mean, they're unbeaten.
Yes.
And they have a huge statement win now there, and if you look at the rest of their schedule, they'll wind up, they have a very good chance of playing that big game at the end against Washington with both those teams unbeaten. Now, obviously, it's not necessarily going to happen, but they have a chance of that. They call that the Apple Cup, right?
The Apple Cup, yeah.
And, so the winner of that game could be unbeaten at the very end of the year.
I think Washington has a better chance than Washington State. Washington doesn't play USC.
Washington State just beat USC.
No, Washington State just beat USC.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Washington State has that win,
Right. But I don't.
Glamour win.
I think Washington is a better team than Washington State. That's what I'm getting at. So even if you get to that game, I think Washington is the best team in the Pac-12. But because of what happened last year, and I know the committee is not supposed to pay attention to that, but because of Washington getting drubbed last year in the college football playoff, if they win the Pac-12, I don't think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt this year.
You left out 2 unbeaten Big Ten teams also in Wisconsin and Michigan. Are we buying either of them? them?
I'm buying a little bit of Michigan. I'm not buying Wisconsin. Their schedule is setting up very, very well for them right now, but I think their schedule is going to get tougher as they go on. Michigan, their defense is outstanding. It was the best defense in the country last year. I think statistically it's the best defense this year. But, man, the offense has been just terrible. And I think eventually Penn State's going to catch it with them. I think Penn State's the best team in the Big Ten. I do.
Penn State, I do as well. And I tell you, there's two guys that we need to start looking at. And I'll say it because it's the left coast that we don't. The quarterback for Washington State, Luke Falk, he's trying to say, hey, look at me. I'm 6'4", I'm 225, I've got 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I'm a prototypical looking type of an NFL quarterback. How about the way I'm throwing the ball and what he did in his opportunity in the spotlight? And how about the kid, we kind of put them by the wayside because they've lost early with Stanford. And they just had Christian McCaffrey and what he did. How about Bryce Love? Yeah. What this running back is doing. He has over 1,000 yards already in 5 games. He's averaging 11 yards a carry. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Phenomenal. But, again, their games for East Coast and Midwest, their games start later, so you don't see him as much. That kid is running great, and Falk is throwing great for Washington State. You just want to give some of those guys some love.
So and well-deservedly so, and so those are some of the great performances.
Do you believe our wives are winning this thing?
No, yeah,
our
the wives. Yeah.
This past week, my wife won. Cousin Eddie came in second, and your wife came in third. Mike was trying to catch her but couldn't. So overall now, my wife is first and yours is second.
Yeah.
What does that say about you two? I'm just curious.
It means we married women who know a lot about football.
Exactly right.
I don't doubt that, but to me it says a lot about you two also.
There's 11 of us in this. A few of us haven't won anything, including me, Darius.
I finished third once.
Yeah.
Once?
You finised third once.
I was in the money one time.
It's my son Jake, I don't believe, has won at all yet. Trey Wingo's in it as well. He hasn't won either. It's been brutal.
Okay.
Brutal.
So we got the good, the bad, and the ugly from the college football, and we're going to combine the bad and the ugly because they sort of look the same. With a couple of coaches who are very much on hot seats right now, and let's start with Tennessee and Butch Jones. Butch Jones against top 10 opponents, including this past weekend at Tennessee. He's played 12 games. You want to guess what his record is?
Not good.
It's 0-12.
Yeah.
And in those 12 games, they've been outscored by 25 points per game. And this weekend, they just got drubbed. You see the names start trending as soon as the game is over. Booger, you're obviously in there doing the studio analysis, and you're sort of following the conversation. What do we make of that situation?
Well, Butch Jones' job at Tennessee and him getting fired, in my opinion, has gone from not if but when, based on what's happened. If you look at the way this team has played all year, they're a 2-point conversion away from losing to Georgia Tech. A UMass team that's terrible, hasn't won a game, had the ball with a chance to beat Tennessee at home. And then this past weekend, when you have a game, a rivalry game against Georgia, and you basically lay an egg and you get beat 41-0. And the natives, they've gone beyond restless. Butch Jones kept saying, give us time, brick by brick. We're going to build this thing up. Well, guess what? It's time for the house to be built. And right now the house has no roof on it, and they're tired of waiting. And I think his outburst with the media this past week really kind of turned a lot of people who may have been in his corner away. And I just think it's not if but when now on when Tennessee makes a move on them.
They have a bye this week, I believe. Then they play South Carolina, and then they're at Alabama.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I mean, you never like to talk about somebody getting fired, and
they could win all the thing is they could win all the rest of the games on their schedule, though. I mean, the only game that I'm looking at there that they are underdogged is going to be the Alabama game. Every other game.
The only problem is how they were playing. Again, the game against UMass. I mean, what they were doing against that team.
I get it. Now that said, they give up a play at the end of the. They should have won the Florida game, right? I mean, they should have gone into this week unbeaten.
Once again, Greeny, it's the defensive call at the end of that game. That's coaching. So yeah, you can say they should have won it, and I don't know that they're going to win. Beat South Carolina. Will Muschamp has that group playing a little better. I know they didn't win against Texas A&M, but they're playing better. So yeah, they could run off and go on a magical run. They're not beating Alabama.
No. But I meant aside from Alabama,
right? Yeah, Kentucky, Southern Miss, Missouri, and they do play LSU, then Vanderbilt.
Which is not very
well. Then that brings us to LSU. I was saving the best for last. But here's the tweet. Troy University tweeted, "Hey LSU, thanks for having us down for homecoming. We really enjoyed it. Again, they went into homecoming at LSU. They got paid $985,000 to play the game, and they handed LSU one of the most embarrassing losses we've seen in a long time. You're an alum. You love the program. What do we say?
Well, I was very, very embarrassed, and I let the people, the powers that be, know that. And I think when you watch the tape, here's what you see. Ed Orgeron has a defensive coordinator in Dave Aranda, who's one of the top in the country. So now you say, okay, well, what do we need offensively? Let's go out and bring in Matt Canada, a guy that was at Pitt. Pitt beat Clemson. They got this offense that's a little gimmicky, a little gadgety. So much movement. Much movement. And as you're watching the Troy game, the first half, you don't see any movement. You see a stagnant offense. And I'm like, okay, that's not Matt Canada. The second half, you come back and you see an offense that's got all the movement and all these different things going on. And so, Greeny, there's a disconnect. Based on what I see on tape, there's a disconnect from the offensive philosophy and the staff. Like, to me, there's a disconnect. LSU has turned into a soft football team. They're not physical on the offensive line. And when your offensive line is physical, go look what also happened. Your defensive line is not going to be physical. So LSU, who used to be one of the most physical, hard-nosed teams in America, is now a soft football team. And when you add to it that they have a lot of young players, that's a bad mixture. Young guys that are soft, that are getting beat up at the line of scrimmage, and an offense that really doesn't have an identity. And all of that comes right back to the head coach, Ed Orgeron. He's got to get it fixed. Okay, he did a very, very good job as an interim coach. He's done really, really well in recruiting. But as it comes to the field now, when he is the head coach, that interim tag is gone. Yeah. He's not doing a good job of galvanizing and getting that organization to play well, and the buck stops with him, and I think he knows that. Which
is something because, I mean, that's why he got the job, and we all were like, yeah, we love this guy. Yeah. Guys want to play for this guy. You know, he's this rough, tough with this voice, and everybody loves trying to mimic it, and you thought, okay, here we go. But to your point about Canada, you know, me and my son did his bowl game, Pitt against Northwestern, with all that movement, and then you don't see all that movement, so you wonder, okay, are they not digesting the playbook right now? So maybe it is a matter of time, you know, especially with this offense. How the defense give up 24, though, you know, that's something that shouldn't be happening.
The issue also you see, you know, is guys, it's the effort. You know, when you watch the game, it's one thing to lose, and we talk about this with Butch Jones-Greeny. Coaches are going to lose games. Like that's inevitable. But it's how you lose, how you play. Do you see the effort? Do you see the hustle? Do you see the energy? You're not seeing that right now with LSU. And a lot of people around the country are writing articles about it. Pete Thamel wrote a great article about he's talked to some coaches, and you don't see the same energy and effort and tenacity from the LSU team that you're used to seeing. And once again, all that goes back to the head coach, as we talked about earlier. Most teams take the personality of their head coach.
Are you surprised? Because didn't we
Very surprised.
Yes. That Orgeron was that. Guys rallied around him.
If
guys
nothing else,
him
they
to
did that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That wouldn't be an issue.
If they can't be that, then that's the most alarming thing so far of the college football season.
I agree.
So who's the name that's out there? I'm not suggesting they're going to fire the coach at LSU, but certainly you mentioned Tennessee. Well, who's the name out there?
You know, the name that everybody's going to talk about is a guy who retired but probably isn't done coaching, and that's Bob Stoops.
Right.
I mean, do we really think he's done coaching football?
Yeah, I don't. I do.
You think he's done?
I do. Based on what happened to his dad and based on him seeing kind of how football played a role.
His father, for those who don't know, coached at high school and died of
on the sideline.
On the sideline. Right. Passed away.
And so I think you get the feeling that he wants to do more in life based on that. So he's a guy.
A young guy out there people want?
Chad Morris at SMU is a young guy who's looking for a bigger job. Some would say the name John Gruden keeps coming up, especially around Tennessee. But like
any hot assistants, you know, as well. Venables from.
His
name
Venables,
always comes up, right?
Find a hot offensive coordinator or a hot defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I love Lane Kiffin. I think he's going to be head coach again at some point.
He is, we'll see.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Booger, you're the best. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, you know, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.